At 73, I thought I knew what betrayal looked like until my own grandson destroyed everything I built. My name is Cassimir Holt, and I spent decades as both a civil engineer and pastor in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The boy I raised from childhood became the man who threw me to the wolves for his career. Stay with me as I share how my grandson, the one I loved deeply and gave everything to, betrayed me for his own selfish reasons, and how the universe gave me just what I needed to get my revenge. You might be wondering, how can a pastor seek revenge? Isn't that against God's word? Stay with me, and you'll see exactly how it all unfolded. It all began on a quiet Tuesday morning, when I received an official letter from the Internal Revenue Service about unreported income. My hands shook as I read accusations from the IRS letter about suspicious deductions from 5 years earlier when I worked as an engineer. I was confused at first. As a pastor, I'm very careful with anything related to finances, and I know I never failed to pay my taxes when I was still working as an engineer. I couldn't understand the details of the letter in my hands. I needed help understanding these complex legal terms, so I reached for my phone to call the one person I trusted most. Leorik had always been my pride and joy. After his parents died in a terrible car accident, I poured everything into raising him properly. Every sleepless night when he had nightmares, every dollar from my retirement savings for his law school tuition. He graduated at the top of his class and landed a prestigious position at a New Orleans law firm. When I called him that morning, I expected comfort and guidance from someone who understood the law. Instead, I heard something cold in his voice. He asked careful questions about my engineering contracts and financial records from years past. His tone felt different, professional rather than personal, like I was just another client instead of his grandfather. Leorik told me not to worry, saying it was probably just an IRS oversight and that he would take care of it. 2 weeks later, federal agents knocked on my front door. They searched through my home like criminals lived there, boxing up decades of documents and memories. My bank accounts were frozen immediately, leaving me unable to pay basic bills or support my church activities. The official papers they served contained allegations of tax fraud and financial deception spanning my entire engineering career. The most crushing blow came when I learned who would testify against me. The prosecution announced their lead witness would be my own grandson, Leorik. He claimed he discovered irregularities in my financial records and felt morally obligated to report them to authorities. The news reports never mentioned that this was the same man who raised him from childhood. To the public, he appeared as a righteous lawyer exposing corruption, not a grandson betraying the person who sacrificed everything for him. My reputation crumbled overnight. Headlines painted me as a hypocrite preacher who stole from both the government and his congregation. Members of Riverstone Chapel, my beloved church family, began whispering about whether I had also misused their donations. Speculation spread like wildfire through our tight community, and attendance dropped dramatically as people avoided being associated with scandal. I watched the destruction unfold on television news broadcasts. Reporters stood outside my church, interviewing former members who expressed shock and disappointment. The journalist described me as a fallen religious leader who had deceived his followers for years. My life's work building bridges and serving God was reduced to sensational headlines about corruption and greed. The isolation felt unbearable. Phone calls stopped coming from old friends who once sought my counsel and prayers. Neighbors avoided eye contact when I walked to my mailbox, their expressions filled with judgment and disgust. Even grocery store clerks treated me differently, whispering to each other when they thought I couldn't hear their conversations. But the deepest wound came from understanding Leorik's motivation. This wasn't about justice or moral obligation, like he claimed publicly. Court documents revealed his strategy to build a zero-tolerance reputation that would attract wealthy clients to his law firm. He used our family tragedy as a stepping stone for his professional ambition, calculating that prosecuting his own grandfather would generate media attention and establish his credentials. Every night, I sat in my empty study where I once wrote sermons filled with hope and forgiveness. The silence felt deafening after years of phone calls from congregation members seeking guidance. I couldn't understand how the boy I carried on my shoulders, taught to ride bicycles, and cheered at graduation could orchestrate my public destruction without showing any remorse. What I didn't know then was that my lowest moment would become the foundation for an incredible comeback. As the scandal consumed my life, I made a decision that seemed pointless at the time, but would prove crucial later. I continued recording my sermons online, even though my physical congregation had abandoned me almost entirely. The empty pews at Riverstone Chapel told the story of my fallen reputation. Where once over 1,000 members gathered each Sunday, now only a handful of loyal elderly parishioners remained. Their faces showed a mixture of faith and uncertainty, unsure whether to believe the headlines or trust the man who had shepherded them for decades. I preached to nearly empty rooms, my voice echoing off bare walls that once buzzed with community fellowship. The weight of rejection pressed down on my shoulders as I delivered messages about forgiveness and redemption to people who questioned my integrity. Some Sundays, only 15 or 20 people showed up, their whispered conversations stopping abruptly when I entered. My online sermons reached a different audience, though. People from across the country watched my live streams, drawn perhaps by curiosity about the controversial pastor making headlines. I never imagined that among these anonymous viewers was someone who would change everything about my situation. His name was Thorn Velick, a retired federal auditor living in Baton Rouge. 2 people helped me get justice against Leorik, my grandson, and Thorn was the first. During my crisis, I had no idea someone named Thorn even existed. Thorn wasn't even an active member of my church. He had recently lost his wife after 40 years of marriage. Grief consumed his daily routine, leaving him searching for meaning in his remaining years. Before my scandal, he discovered my online sermons during sleepless nights, finding comfort in messages about hope during difficult times. So when my televised disgrace reached national attention, Thorn felt something was wrong with the narrative being presented. Thorn met with me and introduced himself. He asked a few questions about the allegations, and I told him I was innocent. I explained that I didn't fully understand everything, but it seemed like my grandson was setting me up. Thorn was shocked. He had no idea that the lead witness, Leorik, was my grandson. He said it was hard for him to believe the accusations against me. He added that his decades of experience investigating financial crimes had taught him to recognize patterns and inconsistencies. The case against me seemed too convenient, too clean, like someone had orchestrated events to achieve a specific outcome. To my surprise, Thorn told me that even before contacting me, he began conducting his own investigation. He analyzed court documents, examined financial records, and studied the timeline of events leading to my arrest. His methodical approach revealed discrepancies that prosecutors had either missed or chosen to ignore. Travel records showed Leorik had been in specific locations at times that contradicted his sworn statements. Now, the second person who helped me get justice against Leorik, my grandson, came from an entirely unexpected source. 2 days after Thorn met me, on a gray afternoon, as I sat alone in my study wrestling with despair, someone knocked on the church door. I opened it to find Braille, a homeless man I had fed outside the chapel for years. Braille's weathered face carried an urgency I had never seen before. Braille had worked janitorial shifts at various office buildings to earn money for food and shelter. Braille told me that several months earlier, he had cleaned floors at Leorik's prestigious law firm during evening hours. The cleaning staff often became invisible to busy professionals who discussed sensitive matters without considering who might overhear their conversations. Braille told me about conversations he had witnessed between Leorik and his senior partners about using me as what they called a clean-faced target. They discussed how prosecuting a respected religious leader would generate massive media attention and establish Leorik's reputation as someone willing to pursue justice regardless of personal relationships. Braille remembered specific details about these conversations, including dates and the names of other lawyers present. He had not understood the significance of what he heard until he saw news reports about my arrest. The pieces of their plan became clear to him, and he realized I was being used as a stepping stone for my grandson's career advancement. I listened to Braille's account with growing amazement. This man, whom society had dismissed and forgotten, had become an unexpected witness to the conspiracy against me. His testimony could potentially expose the truth about Leorik's calculated betrayal, but I knew convincing authorities would require more than the word of a homeless person. Now, before we proceed, it's very important to say that if you're enjoying this story, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. By liking, subscribing, and even leaving a short comment of where you are watching from, you are helping me grow this channel so that other people can find this video and learn the graceful wisdom tips that it offers. I share real stories from people who face tough situations just like this. These stories aren't just for entertainment, They're meant to help us learn and grow wiser. We can sometimes become vulnerable, and that's why it's so important to learn from the experiences and mistakes of others. Together, we can protect ourselves and protect each other through shared wisdom. Now, back to our story. That evening, after listening to Braille's account, I contacted Thorn. Our phone conversation lasted hours as I shared everything Braille had revealed. Thorn listened carefully, asking detailed questions about dates, locations, and specific statements. His excitement grew as he realized Braille's information aligned perfectly with the discrepancies he had discovered in his independent investigation. These two strangers, one forgotten by society and another grieving his personal loss, had become my unlikely allies in seeking justice. Neither had any obligation to help me, yet both felt compelled to expose the truth. But Thorn knew we needed more than witness claims. We needed irrefutable evidence, something Leorik would never expect. So, we devised a plan. The plan we developed was risky but necessary. Here is the plan in simple words. Thorn would pose as a wealthy, morally bankrupt businessman. He would approach Leorik under a fake identity, claiming he ran a shady business empire and needed legal protection after defrauding multiple clients. Thorn would make it clear that he didn't want a righteous lawyer. He needed someone dirty, willing to help a guilty man walk free. The goal of the plan was to tempt Leorik into revealing who he truly was, not knowing that Thorn has an audio recorder in his pocket to record the conversation. If Leorik fell for the bait, we planned to use a combination of that implicating audio recording, the discrepancies Thorn had discovered in his independent investigation, and the witness claim of Braille to present a case in court against Leorik. All we needed from the audio recording was for Leorik to admit that he's willing to defend clients he already knows are guilty. That alone would show he's a corrupt lawyer motivated by greed, not justice. Thorn told me about the plan, and I agreed to it and gave permission for us to go ahead. I wasn't after revenge. I just wanted to clear my name. But I struggled with the moral implications of this deception. My entire life had been built on honesty and integrity, yet here I was planning to trick my own grandson. Sleep became impossible as I wrestled with questions about whether seeking justice this way compromised my faith. Was I becoming the very thing I preached against? Or was I simply fighting for truth in a world that had abandoned fairness? Thorn spent weeks preparing his false identity as Marcus Langdon, a wealthy entrepreneur with fraudulent business practices. He studied financial fraud cases to sound convincing and practiced his story until every detail seemed natural. His background as a federal auditor gave him insider knowledge about how corrupt businessmen actually operated and spoke. Meanwhile, Braille continued gathering information during his cleaning shifts at various downtown office buildings. He paid attention to conversations and collected details that might support our case. Despite his difficult circumstances, he showed remarkable dedication to helping expose the truth about what had happened to me. The recording device was a tiny mechanism that Thorn sewed into the lapel of his expensive suit jacket. Technology had advanced enough that the equipment was nearly invisible while still capturing clear audio. We tested it multiple times to ensure it would work properly during the crucial meeting with Leorik. On the appointed day, Thorn entered the prestigious law offices where Leorik, my grandson, worked. The building represented everything Leorik had achieved through his betrayal of me. Glass windows reflected the city skyline, and marble floors echoed with the footsteps of successful attorneys who commanded high fees from wealthy clients. Braille positioned himself nearby with a prepaid cell phone, ready to alert me if anything went wrong. We had agreed on simple code words that would indicate whether Thorn needed help or if he should abort the mission. The tension felt overwhelming as we waited for news about whether our plan would succeed. Inside the office, Thorn played his role perfectly. He presented himself as someone who had defrauded multiple clients and needed legal protection from potential prosecution. He specifically mentioned wanting a lawyer who was not overly concerned with ethics or moral boundaries in defending guilty clients. Leorik took the bait completely. His arrogance and greed overcame any caution he might have exercised with a new client. He boasted about his willingness to defend anyone regardless of their guilt, as long as they could pay his substantial fees. Thorn made it clear he would pay double his already high fees if Leorik could prove he could get the job done. To impress Thorn, disguised as Marcus Langdon, Leorik shared his strategy for prosecuting me. He said he understood the world as a place where only the strongest survive. Then he proudly admitted to faking evidence to bring down his own grandfather just to boost his public image. No one questions the guy who takes down his own blood." He laughed. The recording captured Leorik admitting that he had fabricated evidence to strengthen the case against me. He laughed as he explained how no one questioned the motives of a prosecutor who was willing to destroy his own family member. Most damaging of all, Leorik revealed that he had planned my destruction months in advance. He discussed how he had manipulated financial records and coached witnesses to provide testimony that would support the charges against me. His confession, which was now captured on tape, showed clear evidence of prosecutorial misconduct and conspiracy to commit fraud. When Thorne finally left the office with the recording, I felt a mixture of relief and heartbreak. We had obtained the evidence needed to prove my innocence, but hearing my grandson's words confirmed the depth of his betrayal. He had not simply reported suspected wrongdoing as he claimed publicly. He had actively orchestrated my downfall for personal gain. That evening, the three of us listened to the recording together in my empty church. Thorne's methodical planning had worked perfectly, and Braille's information had proven accurate in every detail. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt hope that justice might actually be possible. But I also realized that winning this battle would not heal the wounds that Leorik's betrayal had created. Even if my name was cleared and my reputation restored, the relationship with my grandson was probably destroyed forever. The boy I had raised was gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. Filing the court case against Leorik felt like stepping into a battlefield where I would either reclaim my dignity or lose everything permanently. The legal process moved slowly, giving me months to prepare emotionally for confronting the person who had destroyed my life. During those long nights before the trial, I wondered if victory would bring peace or simply reveal how much damage could never be repaired. The courtroom filled with reporters and curious observers who came to witness this unusual family drama. I sat quietly as my legal team presented the evidence we had gathered through Thorne's investigation and Braille's testimony. The hidden recording played clearly through the sound system, allowing everyone to hear Leorik's arrogant confession about fabricating evidence against me. Leorik's defense team attempted to discredit our evidence by claiming the audio recording had been manipulated using artificial intelligence technology. They argued that Braille's testimony should be dismissed because homeless individuals were unreliable witnesses whose memories could not be trusted. Their strategy focused on attacking the credibility of our sources rather than addressing the substance of their revelations. But the judge ordered a forensic audio analysis that confirmed the recording was authentic and unaltered. Timestamps and location data verified that the conversation had taken place exactly as we claimed. Other employees from Leorik's firm were quietly interviewed and confirmed details that supported Braille's account of the conspiracy discussions. As the evidence mounted against him, I watched my grandson's confident demeanor gradually crumble. The smug expression he had worn throughout the early proceedings faded as he realized his carefully constructed lies were being exposed. For the first time since this ordeal began, he looked genuinely afraid of the consequences. The jury deliberated for only 2 hours before returning with their verdict. Leorik was found guilty of perjury, witness manipulation, and attempted fraud. The judge sentenced him to 6 years in federal prison with no possibility of early parole. His law license was permanently revoked, ending the career he had built on my destroyed reputation. When the sentence was announced, I felt no satisfaction or relief. Instead, I experienced a hollow emptiness that surprised me. My name had been cleared, and my frozen bank accounts were restored, but the victory felt meaningless. The boy I had raised was gone forever, replaced by someone whose ambition had consumed every trace of love and loyalty. That Sunday, I returned to preach at Riverstone Chapel. Some former members had already begun returning as news of my vindication spread throughout the community. People wept as I spoke about justice and forgiveness, but I could see the scars that scandal had left on our church family. Trust, once broken, requires years to rebuild completely. But during the weeks following the trial, I discovered something that changed everything about my understanding of this situation. Someone left an envelope in my church office containing pages from Leorik's old journal. The handwriting was definitely his, filled with thoughts and feelings from his teenage years that I had never known existed. Reading those pages broke my heart in ways the betrayal itself had not. Leorik wrote about feeling invisible despite being loved, overlooked despite being provided for generously. He described watching me rush off to church meetings and community obligations, always putting ministry work ahead of personal time with him. Every achievement he accomplished seemed to earn only brief attention before I moved on to the next pastoral responsibility. The journal revealed that Leorik had interpreted my financial support for his education as guilt money rather than expressions of love. He felt like a project to be managed rather than a grandson to be cherished. When he entered the competitive legal world, destroying me became his way of finally being seen and recognized for his own accomplishments. I wept reading those entries because they revealed wounds I had unknowingly created. My dedication to serving others had blinded me to the needs of the person closest to me. While I preached about love and family values, I had failed to give my grandson the presence and attention he desperately needed. Looking back now, I realized that Leorik's betrayal was not just about ambition and greed. It was the tragic result of a boy who had grown up feeling second to everything else in his grandfather's life. Justice had been served, but understanding came too late to prevent the destruction of our relationship. And that is when I understood the most painful truth of all. In trying to serve everyone, I had failed the one person who needed me most. My story teaches us some hard truths about the people we love. 1. Show up. Be present. Presence matters more than provision. Giving money or resources cannot replace giving your time and attention to family members. 2. Express hurt. Find healing. Unspoken hurts can grow into dangerous resentments if we do not address them honestly. 3. Betrayal ruins all success. Success built on betrayal ultimately destroys both the betrayer and the betrayed. The biggest lesson here is that even when we win justice, we cannot undo the damage caused by neglect and misunderstanding. Prevention through genuine relationship building is always better than seeking justice after betrayal occurs. Comment what resonated most with you from this story. Like and subscribe if you want more content like this that helps you learn from the experiences of others. Until next time, keep living with grace and purpose.